Jessica pulled herself from beneath the alien console, her jumpsuit smeared with an iridescent fluid that smelled faintly of cinnamon. The overhead lights in the vessel flickered, casting strange shadows across the curved walls that seemed to absorb rather than reflect light. That should stabilize the primary power coupling, she muttered to herself, checking her diagnostic tablet. The readings made perfect sense, which was exactly what bothered her. She'd expected incomprehensible alien technology, something that would take years to decipher. Instead, after just 6 hours aboard the vessel, she'd already mapped 80% of its systems. It was as if someone had deliberately designed it to be intuitive to human engineers. "Barnes, report status," crackled her supervisor's voice through her comm unit. Jessica could hear the skepticism even through the static. "Sir, I've restored auxiliary power and stabilized life support. The main propulsion system is still offline, but I've identified the issue." She hesitated, unsure how to explain what she'd found. "Sir, I think you should come see this yourself." 20 minutes later, Supervisor Grayson stood beside her, his perpetual scowl deepening as she pointed out the components on her scanner. "That's impossible," he said flatly, squinting at the schematics. "These layouts, they're derivatives of the Morgan-Watkins propulsion system." "Yes, sir. The same system we use in our long-range shuttles. Except this is," Jessica searched for the right words, "it's like seeing a great-grandchild of our technology. Same family, but generations advanced." Grayson's face hardened. "You're suggesting what exactly? That these aliens stole our designs?" A soft chime from her tablet interrupted them. Jessica glanced down, then froze. "Sir, internal sensors are detecting movement in the cargo hold. I thought the crew was evacuated to medical quarantine." Grayson reached for his sidearm. They were. The journey to the cargo hold took them through corridors that curved at odd angles, yet Jessica navigated them with surprising ease. Something about the ship's layout felt familiar, like a dream half remembered. The cargo bay doors slid open soundlessly, another system she'd repaired. Inside, the cavernous space was filled with containers of various sizes, some transparent, others opaque. But Jessica's attention was drawn to the movement at the far corner. A figure huddled there, nearly 7 feet tall with limbs too long and too thin to be human. Its skin shimmered with a metallic blue tint in the dim light. "Stop right there," Grayson called out, leveling his weapon. The alien turned slowly, revealing multifaceted eyes that reflected Jessica's shocked expression back at her. 2 pairs of arms raised in what seemed a universal gesture of surrender. "Help," it said in perfect English. "Ship damage." Jessica stepped forward despite Grayson's warning hiss. "We know. I'm repairing it." The alien's head tilted in a curiously human expression of surprise. "You understand our systems?" "Strangely, yes." Jessica moved closer, captivated by the being's intricate exoskeleton. "Your technology is similar to ours." The alien made a sound like crystal wind chimes. Jessica realized with a start that it was laughing. "Not similar," it said. "Yours." Back in her small office, Jessica worked through the night, comparing the alien ship's schematics with every propulsion system in Earth's database. The similarities were undeniable, yet the alien technology was decades, perhaps centuries beyond current human capabilities. Her terminal chimed with an incoming message. Admiral Thompson requesting a meeting at 600 hours. The highest-ranking officer in the orbital defense fleet wanted to speak with her personally. Jessica rubbed her tired eyes, wondering how to explain her impossible findings. As dawn broke over the curve of Earth below, Jessica made one final check of the alien vessel's navigation system. What she found stopped her breath. Star charts showing human colonies on worlds humanity hadn't yet reached, trade routes connecting Earth to systems they hadn't yet discovered. And there, embedded in the ship's registry code, an unmistakable manufacturing signature. United Earth Shipyards, Neptune Division, established 2198. A date still 41 years in the future. Admiral Thompson's office overlooked the vast expanse of Dock 17, where the first alien vessel now floated in a cradle of maintenance arms. Through the reinforced glass, Jessica could see repair drones swarming over its hull like mechanical insects. "So you believe these ships originate from our future?" The Admiral's cybernetic eyes whirred softly as they adjusted focus. Unlike many augmented veterans, he made no attempt to disguise his modifications. "The evidence suggests it, sir." Jessica slid her tablet across his desk. "Manufacturing codes, material composition, even the software architecture. They're all evolved versions of current Earth technology." Thompson's metallic fingers tapped a complex rhythm on his desk. "And these other vessels? The insectoid and gaseous species? Same pattern?" "Sir, different exterior designs, different crew physiologies, but the core systems are all derivatives of human engineering. It's as if we become the shipbuilders for the galaxy," Thompson finished. He stood and moved to the window, his reflection ghostly against the backdrop of stars. "The implications are problematic." Jessica felt a chill. "Sir, temporal contamination, Barnes. If these ships truly come from our future, their presence here violates every theoretical model of causality. We're looking at potential timeline corruption on a massive scale." A proximity alert interrupted them as a third ship materialized at the edge of Earth's defensive perimeter. This one was smaller, sleeker, its hull patterned with what appeared to be crystalline growths. "The Lumidians," Thompson murmured. "Crystalline sentience from the Horsehead Nebula, if their credentials are accurate." Jessica squinted at the approaching vessel. "How did you know that, sir?" "Because they've been here before." Thompson's expression darkened. 20 years ago, during the Neptune expedition, we found a derelict matching that exact configuration floating near the outer moons. It was classified beyond top secret. What happened to it? Disappeared from a secure facility during the Mars conflict. Some believed it was destroyed. Others. He trailed off, then abruptly changed subjects. "I want you to lead the inspection team for this new arrival." 3 hours later, Jessica floated through the crystalline ship's main corridor, accompanied by a security detail and Dr. Mike Reynolds, the linguist who'd been assigned to the project after demonstrating unusual aptitude with the first 2 alien languages. "These markings are fascinating," Reynolds said, running his handheld scanner over glyphs that seemed to shift as they moved past. "They contain embedded frequencies that aren't just decorative. They're functional components of the ship's systems." Jessica nodded, distracted by a familiar hum emanating from behind a translucent panel. "This sound. It's a Hammond field modulator, but operating at a frequency I've never seen before." The panel slid open at her touch, revealing a chamber filled with pulsating crystalline structures connected to what was unmistakably a human-designed control interface. "That's impossible," Reynolds whispered. "These components were manufactured on Earth," Jessica confirmed, pointing to a tiny engraving. "Hyperion Industries, Mars Colony." "But Hyperion doesn't have a Mars division." "Not yet," Jessica said quietly. Their exploration was interrupted by the arrival of the Lumidian delegation, 3 crystalline entities that seemed to float rather than walk, their translucent bodies refracting light in hypnotic patterns. Reynolds activated his translator as the lead entity began emitting melodic tones. The translation came through his device in a synthetic voice. "We seek repair services as specified in the Accords of Jupiter, Section 12, Subsection Gamma." Jessica and Reynolds exchanged bewildered glances. No such accords existed. "When were these accords established?" Reynolds asked carefully. "The Lumidian's crystalline form, pulsed with blue light. Standard Earth year 2235, following the Centauri conclave." Back in Admiral Thompson's office, Jessica laid out her findings. "Sir, they're not just from our future. They believe they're in their present. The Lumidian ambassador mentioned trade agreements that won't exist for another century, as if they were established law." Thompson's expression was grim. "It's worse than I thought. They're not just displaced in time. They're unaware of the displacement. Something is fracturing reality itself." What happens when they realize the truth? Jessica asked. That's what worries me. Thompson activated a secure holographic display showing surveillance footage from the quarantine zone. The insectoid Varax were constructing something in their assigned quarters, using materials smuggled aboard. I believe some already have. Hold still, Dr. Reynolds murmured as he adjusted the neural interface behind Jessica's ear. The small device hummed softly against her skin. This prototype should allow you to understand most species without my constant presence. Jessica winced as the translator calibrated itself to her neural patterns. You sure this is safe? Reasonably, Reynolds replied with a half-smile. It's based on the communication module we removed from the Varax ship. I've just modified it for human physiology. Modified future tech. That's reassuring. The diplomatic zone sprawled across Dock 19, hastily converted from a cargo bay into an interspecies meeting area. 17 different alien delegations now occupied the space, their environmental needs accommodated through a patchwork of engineering solutions. The air was thick with unfamiliar scents and sounds. Jessica activated her translator as they approached a cluster of nubulans, their gaseous forms contained within transparent suits that shifted from blue to green to purple. The translator rendered their color speech into words that echoed directly in her mind. Cannot be possible. Our navigational records indicate standard arrival patterns, one nubulan was saying. Yet the stellar configurations are incorrect. Another replied, its colors darkening to navy blue. The humans claim this is the year 2157 by their calendar. A deception, clearly. Our departure was logged as 2392. Jessica and Reynolds exchanged glances, but continued past without revealing they'd understood. They made their way to a secluded maintenance corridor where they could speak privately. They know something's wrong, but they think we're lying to them, Reynolds said, his voice low. None of this makes sense, Jessica replied. If they're from the future, why don't they remember time travel? And why come here specifically? Reynolds pulled up schematics on his tablet. I've been mapping the origin points of all arriving vessels based on their navigational data. Look at this pattern. The display showed a three-dimensional star map with dozens of trajectory lines converging on Earth from different points in space and time. It's like a funnel, Jessica observed. As if something is pulling them here. Or someone, Reynolds replied grimly. Their conversation was interrupted by an emergency alert. 3 more ships had appeared in high orbit, their sudden materialization triggering defense systems. Jessica's comm unit crackled with Admiral Thompson's voice ordering them back to command. As they hurried through the diplomatic zone, Jessica noticed unusual activity among the Varax delegation. The insectoids were loading containers onto anti-gravity sleds, their mandibles clicking rapidly in what her translator interpreted as agitated speech. They're evacuating, she realized. They know something's happening. Reynolds grabbed her arm, pulling her into a service tunnel as a security team rushed past. This way, we need to check something first. The tunnel led them to a restricted section of the first alien vessel, where Admiral Thompson had established a secure research facility. Reynolds used his clearance to bypass the guards, explaining they had critical information. Inside, engineering teams were dissecting components removed from various ships. Jessica immediately noticed something strange about the arrangement of parts. These are all the same components, she said, examining the pieces spread across different workstations. Different designs, different materials, but functionally identical. Manufactured by different companies that don't exist yet, Reynolds added, picking up a circuit board stamped with Lunar Heavy Industries, 2276. Jessica moved to a terminal and began cross-referencing the components with Earth's existing technological development timeline. These aren't just similar to our technology. They're direct evolutionary descendants. It's like seeing a family tree of innovation that hasn't happened yet. An explosion rocked the station, sending them stumbling against the wall. Alarms blared as emergency lighting bathed the room in red. The Varax ship, someone shouted from the corridor. It's trying to break free from the docking clamps. Jessica's tablet blinked with an incoming transmission, a message bypassing official channels. The sender was anonymous, but the content made her blood run cold. Causality breach detected. Temporal collapse imminent. Find the anchor point. The first ship holds the key. EU. Reynolds looked over her shoulder at the message. EW. Who's that? Jessica's mind raced, connecting fragments of the puzzle. I don't know, but I think we need to get back to the first ship right now, before it's too late. Through the viewport, they watched in horror as the Varax vessel tore free from its moorings, its engines flaring with impossible energy as it accelerated toward Earth's atmosphere. The station's emergency systems wailed as Jessica and Reynolds raced through crowded corridors. Civilians and non-essential personnel pushed past them toward evacuation points, while security teams moved in the opposite direction, weapons ready. Admiral Thompson is coordinating pursuit ships, Reynolds shouted over the chaos. The Varax vessel breached atmosphere over the Pacific. Jessica checked her tablet, which displayed the trajectory of the escaping ship. They're not running away. They're heading for something. They reached the quarantine vessel, the first arrival that had started everything. Unlike the other docks, this one was eerily quiet, its security detail absent. Where is everyone? Jessica whispered, her hand instinctively moving to the shock pistol at her hip. Reynolds gestured to an emergency alert on a nearby terminal, diverted to handle the Varax situation. Stations at minimum staffing. Convenient, Jessica muttered. She approached the airlock, entering her override code. The door slid open with a pneumatic hiss. Inside, the ship was dark, emergency lighting casting long shadows across alien equipment. Jessica's neural translator picked up no communications, but her engineering scanner detected power fluctuations deep within the vessel. Someone's here, she whispered. They moved cautiously through the corridors, following the power signature to the navigation bay. The room was dominated by a three-dimensional star map projector, currently active and displaying what appeared to be a timeline of Earth's solar system spanning centuries. A figure hunched over the controls, manipulating the display with inhuman precision. It wasn't Varax or Nubulon, but something else, a being with translucent skin that seemed to shimmer between solid and liquid states. Reynolds activated his translator. Identify yourself. The figure turned slowly. Where a face should be, there was only a reflective surface that mirrored their own expressions back at them. When it spoke, its voice resonated from its entire body. Time archivists. We observe. We record. We do not interfere. Jessica approached cautiously. You're not from any of the delegations. We came with the first vessel, undetected. Our purpose is documentation of temporal anomalies. Reynolds moved closer to the navigation display. You know these ships are from the future. From multiple futures, the being corrected. Divergent timelines now converging. A paradox forming. Jessica pointed to the star map. What are you showing here? The fracture point. The moment everything changed. The display zoomed in, focusing on Earth orbital space in the year 2389. A massive structure hovered above the planet, a ring-shaped device that pulsed with energy. The Mobius Drive Test Facility, the being explained. Humanity's attempt to harness folded spacetime for instantaneous travel. The experiment created temporal rifts, pulling objects backward through time. These ships, Jessica began, were in proximity to rifts when they formed, dragged into your time without explanation. Their crew's memories altered by temporal shock. The display shifted, showing the Varax ship currently descending toward Earth. A blinking indicator showed its destination, a remote location in the Pacific Ocean. What are they doing? Reynolds demanded. Seeking the anchor point, the location where the first temporal technology will be discovered. The origin of the Mobius principle. Jessica felt a chill. They want to prevent the future from happening, or ensure it, the archivist countered. Causality is complicated. A violent tremor shook the ship, Warning lights flashed as the station's alert system announced. Gravitational anomaly detected. All personnel evacuate affected sectors immediately. The archivist's form rippled with concern. They have activated a temporal beacon. They seek to communicate with their future. This is forbidden. Jessica's tablet chimed with an incoming message. Admiral Thompson requesting immediate assistance. The Varax ship had crashed into the Pacific, but not before releasing something into the ocean. We need to go, Reynolds urged, pulling Jessica toward the exit. Wait, she told the archivist. If these ships are being pulled from the future, why are they all coming here? To this specific point in time. The being's reflective face rippled. Because of you, Jessica Barnes. Your discovery today creates the foundation for all future temporal theory. The ships are drawn to the birthplace of their own technology. As they ran toward the command center, Jessica's mind reeled with implications. Reynolds, if what the archivist said is true, then everything we're doing now is creating the future that sends these ships back to us. A perfect loop, Reynolds agreed grimly. With no beginning and no end. Jessica stopped suddenly, an impossible thought forming. Unless we break it, what if we could send a message forward in time? Warn them about the Mobius drive before they even build it. Reynolds stared at her. And how exactly would we do that? Jessica smiled. The same way they sent us a message. Find me everything we have on temporal beacons. Temporal beacons are theoretical at best, Admiral Thompson said, his cybernetic eyes scanning the hastily assembled reports, and highly dangerous. Command center screens displayed the aftermath of the Varax ship crash, a smoking impact crater in a remote part of the Pacific, surrounded by naval vessels establishing a quarantine zone. Underwater drones transmitted murky footage of something massive sinking toward the ocean floor. The Varax were willing to sacrifice themselves to deploy whatever that is, Jessica pointed out. We need to understand what they knew. Thompson nodded grimly. Our window is closing. More ships are appearing every hour. The public can't be kept in the dark much longer. Jessica turned to Reynolds. The archivist mentioned that the first ship contains the key. We need to return there immediately. I'm coming with you, Thompson declared, checking his sidearm. This just became a matter of planetary security. Back aboard the first vessel, they found the archivist gone. The ship's systems were cycling through an automated diagnostic sequence, displays flickering with alien script that Jessica's translator struggled to decipher. It's counting down, she realized. This ship is preparing for something. Thompson led them deeper into the vessel, past areas Jessica had already explored. There's a sealed section we haven't been able to access. Engineering team tried cutting through, but the material self-repairs. They arrived at a seamless wall at the end of a narrow corridor. Unlike the rest of the ship's metallic surfaces, this barrier had an organic quality, almost like living tissue. The material absorbs laser cutting and sonic disruption, Thompson explained. We've tried everything in our arsenal. Jessica approached the wall, studying its surface. Faint patterns rippled beneath, reminiscent of circuit pathways, but organic in nature. She noticed a small depression at chest height. Has anyone tried interfacing with it directly? She asked, reaching toward the depression. Barnes, wait. Thompson began, but Jessica had already placed her palm against the surface. The material pulsed with light, tendrils of luminescence spreading from her hand throughout the wall. A sample probe extended from the depression, pricking her palm before retreating. DNA verification, Jessica murmured as the wall began to part like living curtains. Reynolds stared at her. It was designed to recognize your specific genetic code. How is that possible? The chamber beyond was small and spherical, unlike the angular designs of the rest of the ship. At its center floated a stasis pod, suspended in an energy field that distorted light around its edges. Inside lay a woman, perhaps 70 years old, her silver hair forming a halo around a face lined with age, but somehow familiar. Neural implants pulsed beneath her skin, connected to the pod through a web of glowing filaments. Life support is active, Jessica said, checking her scanner. She's alive, in some form of suspended animation. Thompson circled the pod cautiously. Human, not alien. This raises more questions than it answers. Jessica studied the control panel attached to the pod. These are Earth-made components, but centuries ahead of our technology. She pressed a sequence that felt instinctively correct. I think I can wake her. The pod hummed as the stasis field fluctuated. The woman's eyelids fluttered, then opened suddenly, revealing eyes of startling clarity. She gasped, struggling against her restraints before focusing on the three figures before her. Jessica, she whispered, her voice raspy from disuse. You found me. Jessica stepped back, stunned. How do you know my name? The woman's gaze moved to Thompson and Reynolds, recognition evident in her expression. Admiral. Doctor. The gang's all here, just as I remembered. Thompson raised his weapon slightly. Identify yourself. Dr. Emily Walker, Temporal Physics Division, Earth Sciences Academy. The date on my side is February 17, 2389. She coughed, accepting the water Reynolds offered, though I suspect that's not when we are now. 2157, Jessica told her. You're 232 years in your past. Walker closed her eyes briefly. Then we still have time. The fractures haven't fully formed yet. Fractures in what? Reynolds asked. In reality itself. Walker struggled to sit up, the neural implants in her skin glowing brighter with her movement. I placed myself in this ship as a failsafe, a human time capsule. If temporal displacement occurred, I would be here to prevent catastrophe. Jessica's engineering scanner began beeping urgently, detecting massive energy fluctuations throughout the station. Outside the vessel, emergency alerts blared. What's happening? Thompson demanded. Walker's expression was grim. They're coming through. All at once. The rifts are widening. On Jessica's tablet, sensor readings showed dozens of new vessels materializing in Earth orbit, far more than the station could accommodate. Some were appearing partially inside existing structures, the overlapping matter causing explosive reactions. We're out of time, Walker said, her eyes fixed on Jessica. You need to know the truth now. About who you really are. Dr. Walker's neural implants pulsed as she connected to the ship's systems. Holographic displays materialized around them, showing Earth's orbital space crowded with vessels from different eras, many materializing with catastrophic results. In my time, you're a historical figure, Jessica, Walker explained, her fingers dancing through the holographic controls. The founder of temporal mechanics. Your work on this very crisis creates the foundation for everything that follows. Jessica stared at her. That's impossible. I'm just a station engineer. For now. Walker smiled. But your insights from this event will lead to the temporal accords, the unified field theory, and eventually. She paused. The Mobius drive. Thompson stepped forward. You're saying she invents the very technology that causes this disaster. History is circular, Walker replied. The question is whether we let it repeat or find a way to break the loop. The ship shuddered as something massive materialized too close to their dock. Emergency klaxons blared throughout the station. Reynolds checked his tablet. Multiple hull breaches reported in sectors 7 through 12. Station integrity compromised. Walker struggled to her feet, steadying herself against the stasis pod. We need to move quickly. The temporal cascade effect is accelerating. Soon ships will appear inside the Earth itself. What's causing this? Jessica demanded. The archivist mentioned the Mobius drive, but how does it create tears in time? Walker gestured, and the holographic display shifted to show a massive ring-shaped structure orbiting Earth. The Mobius drive was meant to fold space, creating shortcuts between distant points. But during its first test, something unexpected happened. It folded time as well. The simulation showed energy pulses radiating from the ring, spreading throughout the solar system and beyond. The initial temporal wave pulled hundreds of ships backward through time, Walker continued. But the effect was unstable, creating a cascade that's only getting worse. In my time, Earth's entire solar system was beginning to fracture, reality itself coming apart at the seams. Thompson's cybernetic eyes narrowed. If this technology is so dangerous, why build it at all? Because we didn't know. Walker's face darkened. The theoretical models showed no signs of temporal effects, and the promise was too great. Instant travel across the galaxy, opening up the stars to human exploration. A violent explosion rocked the ship. Through the viewport, they watched as a massive vessel, clearly of human design, but far more advanced than anything currently in Earth's fleet, materialized partially inside Dock 24, the overlapping matter creating a devastating antimatter reaction. The dock disintegrated, taking dozens of smaller vessels with it. "My God," Reynolds whispered. Jessica's mind raced, connecting pieces of the puzzle. The Varax. They deployed something in the Pacific. What were they trying to do? They were attempting to locate the origin point, Walker explained. The place where the first Mobius technology was discovered. The anchor point, Jessica finished. The archivist mentioned it. Walker nodded. A piece of advanced technology found at the bottom of the Pacific in 2163, 6 years from now. The discovery that jumpstarts your research. The holographic display flickered as the ship's power fluctuated. An alert appeared, indicating a massive energy surge building beneath the Pacific Ocean. The Varax weren't trying to prevent the discovery, Walker said grimly. They were ensuring it happens. They believe the Mobius technology is critical to their species' survival in the future. Thompson's comm unit crackled with emergency reports. Earth's governments were mobilizing military forces as ships continued to appear in atmosphere, some crashing into populated areas. Panic was spreading globally. "We're out of time," Walker said, her implants glowing brighter. "We need to make a decision now. We have 3 options. Let events unfold as they did in my timeline, leading to eventual temporal collapse. Destroy the anchor point before it's discovered, potentially preventing your research and the Mobius drive from ever existing, or attempt something never tried before." "What's the third option?" Jessica asked. Walker turned to her, eyes intense. "We create a controlled temporal reversion. Send everything back where it came from, but with a message, a warning about the Mobius drive's fatal flaw." "Is that even possible?" Reynolds asked. "Theoretically, but it would require an enormous amount of energy." Walker glanced at Admiral Thompson. "More than Earth's entire power grid." Thompson understood immediately. "The maintenance docks, the antimatter reactors." "Yes," Walker confirmed, "but converting them would mean sacrificing the station," Jessica finished quietly, "and everyone on it." The command center had become a war room. Military personnel coordinated defensive measures as reports of ship materializations and crashes poured in from around the globe. Earth's governments, once divided by political boundaries, now united against a threat none of them understood. "The death toll is rising," an officer reported, her voice strained. "Materializations in Mumbai, Nairobi, and Santiago. Civilian casualties estimated in the thousands." Admiral Thompson studied the global situation map, his cybernetic eyes processing the information faster than any human could. "We're running out of options. Dr. Walker's proposal may be our only choice." Jessica stared at the engineering schematics displayed on the main screen, her plan to convert the station's antimatter reactors into a temporal reversion device. The math worked, theoretically, but the cost would be catastrophic. "There must be another way," she insisted, "one that doesn't require sacrificing everyone on this station." Dr. Walker, still weak from her long stasis, but growing stronger by the hour, shook her head. "I've run every simulation possible. The temporal fractures are expanding exponentially. Within 48 hours, ships will begin materializing inside the Earth's crust, potentially triggering seismic events that could shatter the planet." Reynolds entered the command center, followed by representatives from various alien delegations. The Lumidians' crystalline forms pulsed with agitated light, While the Nubulon's gaseous bodies swirled turbulently in their containment suits, even the Time Archivist had emerged from hiding, its reflective face rippling with concern. "The alien representatives have been informed of our situation," Reynolds announced, "and they've reached a consensus." The Lumidian leader stepped forward, its crystalline voice translated for all to hear. "We have verified Dr. Walker's claims through our own temporal sensing technology. The rifts are expanding. Reality itself is becoming unstable. Our faction supports the reversion plan," added the Nubulon representative, colors shifting from blue to determined green. "Though it means we may never return to our own time." Jessica turned to Dr. Walker. "What happens to them if we succeed? If we send a warning about the Mobius drive and prevent its creation?" "Their futures will be altered," Walker admitted. "Some of their civilizations developed specifically because of humanity's temporal technology. Without it, their histories take different paths." "We accept this consequence," the Lumidian stated firmly. "The alternative is extinction for all." Admiral Thompson accessed the station's emergency protocols. "If we're going to do this, we need to start evacuation procedures immediately. Essential personnel only will remain." "I'll stay," Jessica said without hesitation. "It's my plan. I'll see it through." "As will I," Dr. Walker added. "My temporal physiology might be crucial for stabilizing the reversion field." Reynolds stepped forward. "You'll need a communications expert to ensure the warning reaches the correct time stream." One by one, volunteers came forward, engineers, scientists, and security personnel willing to sacrifice themselves for Earth's future. The alien representatives offered resources and knowledge, ancient enemies now united by common danger. As evacuation ships departed the station, Jessica stood at the viewport watching Earth below. Lights of cities twinkled across continents, billions of lives unaware their fate rested on decisions being made above them. Dr. Walker joined her, neural implants pulsing softly. "In my timeline, you faced this moment alone. You made this sacrifice without knowing if it would succeed. How can you know that if the timeline changes?" Jessica asked. "Temporal echoes," Walker explained. "Some events are so significant they leave impressions across multiple timelines. Your choice here is one of them." Jessica turned to the older woman. "You knew me, future me, didn't you? That's why the ship's chamber recognized my DNA." Walker smiled sadly. "More than knew you. I studied your work my entire life. When the temporal fractures began, I volunteered for the fail-safe mission because I understood your theories better than anyone." Alarms blared as another massive ship materialized dangerously close to the station. The structure groaned as gravitational forces strained its integrity. "It's time," Admiral Thompson announced from the doorway. "The reactors are ready for conversion. Final evacuation ships depart in 30 minutes." Jessica took one last look at Earth below. "Let's rewrite history, then." "Let's save it," Walker corrected. "And Jessica, there's one more thing you should know about your future self." "In my timeline," Dr. Walker said, her voice barely above a whisper, "you were my grandmother." Jessica froze, staring at the older woman's face, suddenly recognizing familiar features. The set of her jaw, the arch of her eyebrows, features Jessica saw in her own mirror each morning. "That's impossible," she stammered. "The temporal distance is substantial, yes," Walker smiled. "But DNA doesn't lie. The ship's chamber recognized you because it was calibrated to your specific genetic signature, one that I share. I volunteered for this mission because I was the only person who could ensure the failsafe would activate properly." Their moment was interrupted by Admiral Thompson. "The conversion process is underway. Engineering teams report we have approximately 40 minutes before the antimatter containment fields need to be reconfigured." The station's core had been transformed into a makeshift temporal laboratory. Engineers worked frantically alongside alien technicians, adapting equipment never designed for such purposes. At the center stood a hastily constructed device, the quantum beacon that would guide displaced vessels back to their proper time. Jessica focused on the final calculations, her mind racing with possibilities. The warning needs to be specific enough to prevent the Mobius drive's fatal flaw, but vague enough not to erase the beneficial technologies that follow. And it needs to survive the temporal reversion intact, Reynolds added, calibrating communication arrays. We're essentially throwing a message in a bottle across time itself. Dr. Walker connected her neural implants to the central system. I can encode the warning directly into my neural matrix. My implants are designed to withstand temporal shifts. No, Jessica said firmly. You've already risked everything coming back in time. This is my responsibility. She turned to the time archivist, whose reflective face rippled with what might have been concern. You said your kind exists across multiple timelines, observing without interfering. Can you ensure our message reaches its destination? The archivist's form shimmered. We cannot interfere directly, but we can. Witness with intent. Your message will be remembered. Jessica nodded, understanding the subtle distinction. She began programming the quantum beacon, embedding critical engineering data about the Mobius drive's flaws, along with a personal message to her future self. Through the viewport, they watched as another massive ship materialized partially inside Earth's atmosphere, its sudden appearance creating shockwaves that devastated the coastline below. Time was running out. Final evacuation ships have departed, Thompson reported. 28 volunteers remain aboard, 12 humans, and 16 representatives from various species. The station's power grid fluctuated as the antimatter reactors were pushed beyond their design parameters. Warning lights flashed throughout the command center. Containment fields at critical levels. An engineer called out, "We have 10 minutes maximum." Jessica made her final adjustments to the beacon. It's ready. Once activated, we'll have seconds before the temporal wave engulfs the station. Dr. Walker approached, holding a small device. This is a quantum memory capsule. It contains everything humanity will need to develop safe temporal technology in the future. It's programmed to survive the reversion and reach Earth intact. Jessica took the capsule, understanding its significance. A bridge between timelines. A second chance, Walker corrected. The station shuddered violently as structural integrity began to fail. Outside, the fabric of space-time itself seemed to warp, stars smearing across the viewport as reality strained under the pressure of too many temporal incursions. 2 minutes to containment failure, the system announced dispassionately. Jessica looked at the faces around her, humans and aliens united in purpose, willing to sacrifice everything to save reality itself. It's been an honor serving with all of you. She activated the quantum beacon. Energy surged through the station's systems, creating a luminescent pulse that expanded outward in concentric rings. Across Earth orbit, displaced vessels began to shimmer, their forms becoming translucent as they were drawn back toward their proper times. The capsule in Jessica's hand glowed with internal light as she placed it in the ejection tube, programming its trajectory toward Earth. "Good luck, future me," she whispered as she launched it toward the blue planet below. The antimatter containment fields collapsed, releasing pure energy that the beacon shaped into a temporal reversion wave. As the wave engulfed the station, Jessica felt time itself stretch and compress around her. The last thing she saw was Dr. Walker's face, her future granddaughter, smiling with pride as reality blinked. 232 years later, a young physicist named Jessica Barnes found a strange device while diving in the Pacific. Inside was a message that would change humanity's destiny among the stars.